In 2004, Konami released its sequel to their 2003 TMNT game titled Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Battle Nexus. With the cartoon series being a success, Konami was hard at work pushing out a sequel that looked to improve upon its predecessor. However, was this a sequel that'll have you shouting "Cowabunga!" Or will you be saying shell shock by the end? Let's find out. TMNT 2 Battle Nexus' story takes place during the cartoon's second season, in which we see the Turtles travel to space and through time, between dealing with the Triceratons, saving the Fugitoid, facing off against a new opponent that Konami actually created themselves called Slasher, facing off against the Ultimate Ninja Draco, and to naturally facing off against Shredder again. There's a lot happening in this story. Now, the game does push the narrative a bit stronger than its predecessor, and there are certainly more cutscenes, both from the cartoon and drawn in-house again. It does a good job of connecting everything and actually feels like one big story this time around. I really like how Konami took liberties to create a new character like Slasher, who feels like a perfect fit for the TMNT universe. It is an overall cool character. There are also other characters that return from the TMNT universe, both friend or foe, and even some as playable characters. Now, Battle Nexus' gameplay actually does not fall in line with its predecessor. Instead of the traditional co-op beat-em-up action that the first one focused on, Battle Nexus looks to be an entirely different game. It actually plays more like an action platformer this time around. From the get-go, the game is 4-player co-op this time around, and while many clamored for this when the predecessor was only 2-player co-op, don't get ahead of yourselves with excitement here just yet. Battle Nexus adds variety with its platforming, its varied missions, vehicle segments, and overall gameplay mechanics. The game adds a ton more content overall and has a lot more levels than its predecessor. So it sounds good so far, right? Well, because on paper, this sounds like the recipe for a worthy sequel. And unfortunately, Battle Nexus falters quite a bit, and in some ways is actually a step backwards. First off, combat has changed quite a bit. Whereas the first game was responsive and fun, Battle Nexus' controls are unresponsive and delayed. I'm not kidding about the delayed response, as pressing a button will take almost a full second to respond sometimes. Combos are no longer smooth to pull off, and are almost like a dial-a-combo setup where you have to press the buttons in a sequence and just let it all unfold. It's less button mashy than the first game, but it's also far less engaging. Movement is a bit more stiff, as is controlling your turtles during combat. The air juggle move was removed from the previous game, and a block button is now in play. Unfortunately, blocking felt pretty useless, as you still take damage when blocking. And even when you want to block, you'll be stuck already in a combo. It's just never really utilized right. Additionally, you have charge-up attacks. While holding down the strong attack button, you can unleash, well, an even stronger attack. Leo shoots blades from his katanas, Raph does a roundhouse flame kick, Mikey shoots projectiles out of his nunchucks, and Donnie creates a shield that protects him and hurts enemies that attack it. The problem with this is that it still takes too long for these attacks to charge up and actually hit the enemy, even with the ability fully upgraded to level 3. Also, you can pick up objects this time around. Barrels and capsules can be picked up and thrown at enemies, as well as picking up enemies to throw. If you're playing co-op, the turtles can actually do a team attack throw, which is a nice touch. Nothing that's actually necessary for mechanics' sake, but again, a nice addition. Your jump controls are also stiffer than before. While double jumping feels fine where you can course correct your jump direction after the first jump, doing a jump attack also registers in the direction that you're actually facing, which leads to much frustration when trying to hit aerial foes. Also, your shurikens no longer auto-aim to enemies, making the flying enemies, and even some of the grounded ones, near impossible to hit. There is a wall jump mechanic now, and I actually really enjoyed the fact that they added this. Now, let's talk about the camera. While the camera wasn't perfect in the first game, it was kept up close to keep you into the action and worked for the 2-player setup. In this one, the camera is so far zoomed out most of the time to try accommodating for the 4-player co-op nature and make some of the platforming easier, but realistically, it just detracts from the overall action happening on screen. Also, another aspect very much worth noting is that when playing co-op, you all share a single health bar. So, if you have someone playing with you that keeps jumping off cliffs or getting pummeled by enemies, you'll all fail the level if that life bar drops to 0, despite if you and your friends were playing perfectly and you have that one weaker link. I can understand the idea behind this, but as far as mechanically, this isn't really a good idea. Personally, I never really found it to be too much of an issue, and I felt like the health bar was buffed a bit the more players that you were co-oping with, but I still don't like the idea. The last thing I want to mention is the AI. The enemies here seem to love spinning in circles while standing in place until you line up within their sights. It's really jarring, and they really should have just had them stationed in a single spot, because this right here looks pretty silly. If you are playing solo, 2-player, or 3-player co-op, one of you, or two of you, or just you, will be able to switch between the 4 turtles on the fly. Pressing the Z button lets you change between the turtles you and your co-op partners chose, and the reason this is essential is that each turtle actually has a special ability that can be utilized throughout the levels. Leo can cut through metal gates, Raph can push heavy objects, Mikey can basically do his helicopter hover, and Donnie can activate computer terminals that may unlock shortcuts or easier platforming sequences. I actually really like this idea that each turtle had a unique element to them to advance stages in different ways. The main problem that I did have with this was in terms of the controls again, where you need to be completely still before you can switch turtles, and even then, it never always responds to that button prompt. Also, you can upgrade the turtles by collecting specific colored crystals that are hidden in the boxes throughout the stages. Collecting 10 of a specific colored crystal will level up your turtle's ability based on the color, such as attack, defense, charging, and aerial. Now, I mentioned that the game has variety, such as either escort missions, vehicle missions, defeat X amount of enemies, etc. This is something I actually commend Konami doing with this sequel. They wanted to try to make the game feel less repetitive and a little bit more fleshed out. The vehicle missions, while not great, are mindless entertainment, and when playing multiplayer can lead to much laughter and fun times, as I had here co-oping with my brother for this review. These basically feel like bonus missions since there's no consequence to crashing or falling off a cliff. You basically just do these to collect coins, but can also do tricks by pressing the L and R triggers while shooting projectiles, depending on the vehicle, to destroy objects in the way. Now, you do get ranked at the end of each level. During most missions, you will get ranked on your offense, defense, and aerial style with a double S to a letter E grade. While vehicle missions rank you on the amount of coins you collected, your control, which is basically not crashing, and the tricks with the same letter grade system. Now, you have to be aware that the rank will affect all 4 turtles individually, so if you don't switch to the other turtles, they will always get defaulted with the letter E rank for each category, which will bring down your overall team performance rank. So, what does this ranking mean for you, the player? Nothing. It's literally just there for no reason other than just to see how you did. You don't unlock anything based on these ranks, for better or worse. Aside from all this, you can also find antiques and treasures within levels. Once found, you can go to April's second time around shop and unlock what these are. This is a neat idea, and while many of the things unlocked are more concept art and lore, this is also how you unlock the 1989 TMNT arcade game. Now, the TMNT 1989 arcade game port on here plays fine, but they removed the entire soundtrack from the original version in place with Battle Nexus's soundtrack. However, it's not like they chose the good songs from Battle Nexus, no. Instead, they took the worst song from Battle Nexus and put that as every level theme in this version, and then the boss theme is different as well, but it's the weakest selection of tracks that they chose. They also removed the original voiceover work, where now there's no voiceovers for any of the turtles or any of the villains in this game. I'm not quite sure what happened here, and I'm confused if it was a licensing issue since Konami made that version back then too, but the soundtrack is part of the experience, and without it, fans will probably not enjoy playing this version here. I know I personally didn't. Additionally, the game is titled Battle Nexus, so the game does have the Battle Nexus tournament that you can tackle. This mode actually has cutscenes incorporated in between battles, and is a nice way to make this mode feel fleshed out as an integral part of the storyline. Quite frankly, the game isn't necessarily done until you beat this tournament, as the ending here leads into the story of TMNT 3 Mutant Nightmare. The tournament mode here feels similar to the predecessor's challenge mode, where you must defeat bosses and enemies in each stage, and then get a few seconds to break open boxes to nab health and shurikens. I really did appreciate that they made sure to make the story a key component here. Visually, TMNT 2 Battle Nexus mostly ditches the cel-shaded graphics style for a more generic art direction. Coming from the first game, this feels like a big step backwards, and worse yet, the game now runs at 30 frames per second instead of the predecessor running at the 60 frames per second. Now, it's not an ugly game, but it definitely feels like a game that won't stand out as much compared to the nice cel-shaded style of the first game. Animations are okay, but they lack some smoothness from its predecessor. The turtles themselves seem to have a bit more texture detail on them though. However, outside of a few levels here and there, most of the levels look pretty bland. Some levels actually look really lifeless with just a blacked out backdrop that make it look unfinished. The camera doesn't help the case either here since it's so damn zoomed out. I mean, I don't hate the way this game looks, but I would much rather showcase the first game to someone than this one. The frame rate being halved is a big drawback for me. On the flip side, the audio is the game's saving grace. First off, the repetitive voiceovers have been removed, and the turtles speak much less during combat and seem to have more lines now when they do speak. Also, with the voice cast reprising their roles and all added dialogue that they recorded, they all do an excellent job again here. The soundtrack also is mostly awesome. While there are a few tracks here and there that are on the weaker side, especially the one that they used for the arcade version of the game, the majority of the songs here are excellent. Whether navigating the caverns, platforming the snow planet, or the badass character select music, there's a ton of music here that helps immerse you further into the game. The game's sound effects are also a bit more varied and do a good job here. There's only one instance I remember where the camera was so far zoomed out during a platforming section, and the further away from the screen I got, the more silent the sound effects got altogether. Other than that, audio is easily the game's best aspect.
Don't you know not to play with fire? Don't you know not to play with fire? Man, am I thirsty.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Battle Nexus is a game that I have a love-hate relationship with. I love that the game tried to add a variety and change up the gameplay so that it felt like a more unique experience. On the other side though, for everything it added, it removed the key fundamental that should have never been touched, the controls. The poor controls truly do hurt the experience that much. And the combat, they didn't even need to really touch it from the previous game, but they tweaked it so much and it feels far worse. Add in the fact that the unlockable TMNT 1989 arcade game removed the entire soundtrack and voiceovers, and you just have a sequel that has quantity over quality. In the end, can it be an enjoyable game? Sure, if you can look past its brevity of issues, there's still an enjoyable game here, but only for the most die-hard TMNT fans. It should be noted that even with all the issues, I still had a fun time revisiting this game and always found myself replaying many of the levels within the game. TMNT 2 Battle Nexus is a game that tried to change so much and add so much that it lacked the refinement and polish it needed to be great. Now, Konami was already hard at work on the next Ninja Turtles game, which was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 Mutant Nightmare that released in 2005. But does it actually fix many of the issues that Battle Nexus had, or does it actually make things worse than it already is? Well, for that, you'll have to find out in next week's review. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to hit that like button down below and feel free to comment. If you haven't subscribed, be sure to hit that subscribe button and notification bell as I do my best to push out a new GameCube related video every week. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next review.